I was standing in the shower thinking, Kristen, what are you doing? Not in like a cute, like reflective, wow, look at me making all these big life changes kind of way. I mean, genuinely, what are you doing? Why are you selling your house? People were coming to see our house and like, it was in the morning and like by the afternoon, people were coming. The house we have been talking about selling for 3 years, y'all. And suddenly my brain had a complete list of every reason why we should stay. This house is beautiful. We built it. We picked everything out into every little tiny detail of this house. We have space. We have land. Nobody bothers us here. It's comfortable. And now I'm going to sell it so we can go rent something that might be smaller and might not even be as cute. And in that moment, the thing I had wanted for 3 years finally became something real, and I wanted to retreat. Hey, y'all, and welcome back to No Longer Allowed with Kristen. And yes, I know there was no episode last week. If you've been here for a while, you know how much consistency matters to me. And I talk about showing up, and I talk about keeping promises to yourself, and I talk about not disappearing every time life gets busy. I know, so believe me, I noticed the irony when I was the one not putting out a podcast episode. This week of my birthday was a lot. We had back to school happening, things going on with the house, work, the kids, and then I went to the beach for my 40th birthday. I actually brought my own little microphones, the little portable ones with me because I thought, well, if I have time, maybe I'll record at the beach, which looking back was wildly ambitious of me. Like I was at the beach for my birthday. I was not recording a podcast. Like, come on. Then we got home Sunday. I went back to work Monday and I had every intention of coming home Monday night and forcing an episode out because had made this promise that I was going to have an episode out every Tuesday. And just the thought of all of it just completely exhausted me. I sat down at my laptop, opened it up, and realized I was about to record something for one reason only. So I could say I had been consistent. And that is not the same thing as showing up well. So I closed the laptop. I let myself miss the week, not because I'm quitting, not because the podcast doesn't matter, but because I would rather come back present than perform consistency just to prove that I can be consistent in that area of my life. And honestly, that little reset kind of brought me right back to why I started this podcast in the first place. There are things we keep allowing in our lives because they are familiar. They are versions of ourselves we keep returning to because we know them. There are decisions we say we want to make until the moment they become real. And that is exactly what I want to talk to you about today. So if you follow me on social media, you probably know our house is officially for sale. We're trying to sell it by owner for a little while before we decide whether we want to list it with a realtor. And I'm trying very hard not to put my own timeline on this. It's very hard. If it sells this way, great. If we need a realtor, great. If I have learned enough over the last few years to know that trying to control every little detail does not make the outcome arrive any faster. But what is so wild is that we have been talking about making this move since 2023. 3 years, y'all. So we live in a pretty rural area in South Louisiana, and my kids don't go to school where we live. We drive close to like 50 minutes for school. I work in that direction. Nate now works in that direction. And their friends and their sports and all their activities are just like more and more of our life is just in that direction. And we have decided a while back even before like everything really blew up that way, was that we were going to make this decision to move. But a lot has happened in those 3 years. Life did what life does. Plans have changed throughout the time. Work changed. Our family went through seasons we couldn't have predicted. And every time it felt like maybe we were getting close to making the move, something shifted. So this house being for sale is not some impulsive idea I woke up with last Tuesday. I promise you. I know I like to make decisions on the fly. I've learned to do that, but this has been a very thoughtful decision. I have prayed about this. I have journaled about this. We have talked about it over and over. And I have imagined what our life could look like on the other side of this move. I wanted this. Then I put the house up for sale. And people started asking to come see it and like having some like serious inquiries about it. And suddenly it wasn't an idea anymore. The morning of our first showing, I knew I had to get home and do that frantic 30-minute house showing clean. Like I had to. You know, the one where I had to like the lights needed to all be on, the candles had to be lit. I had to do the shutters all open, hide anything that kind of looks any resemblance that a human lived here and that we ate breakfast and ran out the door in the morning. I was getting ready that morning and I was in the shower thinking about everything I had to do. I had to go to work. I had the kids. I had this podcast. I had launching Unbecome still because we start that next week, serving clients, keeping up with the house. And the thought just hit me. Why am I adding this? Like, why am I selling a perfectly good house? And y'all, it is such a good house. It's not like I can make this easier on myself by telling you, well, this house is awful and we hate it here. We don't. We built this house ourselves. We dreamed up the plans. We contracted it out ourselves. Every detail in this house has a story behind it. The lighting, the plumbing fixtures, the layout, all of it came together into this beautiful home that has served our family really well. And we have plenty of room. We have land. Our neighbors aren't on top of us. It's peaceful. And next move is probably going to be a rental. Well, no, it's not even going to probably be. That is what we have decided. It's going to be a rental, which may mean less space, right? It may mean the kitchen isn't exactly what I would choose. It may mean I have to film content in a room that is not as aesthetically pleasing as the one I'm sitting in now. Not that I did too many aesthetic things for this podcast in here because I knew this season would be coming. So standing in that shower, like my brain suddenly became a very persuasive attorney for staying exactly where I am now. It was telling me, look at this house, look at all this room, look at the land. Do you really want to deal with moving right now in this season? Do you really want one more thing on your plate? And for a minute, I thought maybe we shouldn't do this. But then I caught myself. Kristen, you have wanted this for 3 years. The fact that it feels uncomfortable now does not mean the decision is wrong. It means the decision is real. And I remember I almost immediately feeling my body release, like I could breathe again. Because I didn't need to convince myself that this house was bad. I just needed to remember why we were willing to leave something good. And I think this is where we get ourselves stuck all the time. We think we need a dramatic reason to change. We think the job has to become unbearable before we're allowed to leave it. The friendship has to become toxic before we're allowed to create distance. The routine has to completely stop working before we're allowed to try something different. The version of ourselves we've been living has to become so miserable before we're allowed to say, I don't want to be her anymore. But something does not have to be terrible for you to outgrow it. That is the piece I want you to hear. Something can be good and still not be where you're going next. You can be grateful for what something gave you and still know you're ready to move on. You can love the life you built and still feel a pull toward another version of it. And when that next step becomes real, your mind is very good at reminding you of everything familiar that you are about to lose. That doesn't automatically mean your mind is lying to you. My house is really beautiful. Moving really will be inconvenient. A rental may genuinely be smaller. Selling a house while working full-time and raising kids and building a business really is a lot. Those are facts, but they are not the whole truth. And I think that distinction matters. Sometimes your reasons for staying are not lies, they're just not the whole truth. The whole truth is this house is beautiful and the life we want is somewhere else. The whole truth is I'm comfortable here and I'm ready for a new chapter. The whole truth, and again, let's see, change may make my life temporarily more inconvenient, and it may move us closer to the life we have been talking about for years. We have been taught to look at discomfort like evidence. I feel nervous, so maybe I shouldn't do it. I feel uncertain, so maybe this isn't the right time. I miss what's familiar, so maybe I made a mistake. But discomfort is information, y'all. It is not always instruction. Sometimes it is simply the feeling of being somewhere you have never been before. And there's another part of this I've had to see in myself. For a long time, I would have described myself as shy. As I got older, especially through like going through high school, nursing school, and even in some of my early jobs, shy became part of how I explained myself. I'm just shy. I don't like put myself out there. I'm not the person who speaks up, and I'm not the person who gets on camera and talks to strangers on the internet. Except, look at my life now. I host a podcast. I coach women. I put my ideas online every single day. I talk about my life in a way that the younger version of me would have absolutely died over. At some point, I had to realize maybe shy was not the permanent identity I thought it was. Maybe it was a version of me that became familiar. And every time I stepped beyond her, it felt uncomfortable because I was doing something I did not have a lot of evidence yet that I could do. That's what happens when you change. The old version of you has receipts. She can show you years of evidence for who you have been. The new version of you, she has to be built. You create evidence for her by doing the thing while it still feels unfamiliar. And that is why the urge to retreat can get so loud right before the expansion. Familiar does not necessarily mean right. Comfortable does not necessarily mean aligned. And uncomfortable does not necessarily mean wrong. So maybe for you, it has absolutely nothing to do with selling a house. Maybe you've been talking about changing careers for like 2 years. You know you want something different, but your salary is steady. You know your coworkers, you know the schedule, you know how to do the job with your eyes closed. Then an opportunity finally comes up and suddenly you're thinking, you know what? Maybe my job isn't that bad. And maybe it isn't. That doesn't mean you have to stay forever. Maybe you know you need a boundary with someone you love. You have replayed the conversation in your head like 100 times and you know what you need to say. But the second you imagine them disappointed in you, suddenly keeping the peace feels like a whole lot easier to you. Let's see, maybe you've said for years that you want to become healthier, stronger, calmer, more present, and then you actually start changing your routines and realize the people around you are used to that old version of you. Now saying no feels weird. Going to bed a little earlier feels weird at first. You get used to it, I promise. Not being available to everybody feels awkward at first. Taking yourself seriously feels weird. And because it feels weird, you start wondering if you are becoming selfish, difficult, boring, dramatic, whatever label makes it easiest to crawl back into who you were. Or maybe the change is even quieter than that. Maybe nothing in your life is technically wrong. Your life is fine. Your job is fine. Your routines are fine. Like you're doing all the things. Your relationships are great. But you keep having this thought, is this really how I want to keep living? You do not have to wait for fine to turn into awful before you actually start to listen to yourself. You are allowed to want more peace before you completely burn out. You are allowed to want to have a different career before you hate your current one. You are allowed to change the way you show up before something explodes. You are allowed to become someone new before the old version of you completely falls apart. And maybe that is the real question for today. What are you requiring yourself to hate before you finally give yourself permission to outgrow it? Okay, and on every episode, I'm going to give you 3 things to take away. Sorry I did not give y'all 3 things last week. So, for number 1, notice what suddenly becomes very convincing when change gets real. When you finally have the opportunity to do the thing you said you wanted, pay attention to the reasons your mind starts collecting for why you should stay. Don't immediately argue with them, just notice them. Number 2, ask yourself, do I actually not want this anymore? Or do I just want to go back because this suddenly got real? Because those are not the same thing. Sometimes you really have changed your mind, but sometimes nothing about what you want has changed. You've just reached the point where wanting it requires you to actually do something different. And familiar can feel a whole lot safer than going forward. And number three, stop requiring the current thing to be so bad before you allow yourself to choose something different. You can appreciate it, you can be grateful for it, you can acknowledge everything it gave you, and you can still say, I am ready for what's next. And don't forget, y'all, so for next week, Unbecome starts August 31st. When this episode drops, it will be August 25th. You will have 6 days before we start Unbecome. We're going to look at your beliefs, your patterns, versions of you that have been shaping your choices because you cannot change what you cannot see. And if you know there is a version of your life you are ready to step into, but you keep finding yourself retreating to what is familiar, send me a DM with the word unbecome, and I will send you all the details. I am Kristen Falgo. This is no longer allowed. And believing something has to become terrible before you're allowed to outgrow it, that is no longer allowed. I will see y'all in the next episode.